everyone. I'm Carol Williams with Williams Immigration, and we are back for another Monday morning edition of Beyond the Soundbite, where we talk about all things U.S. immigration. So, this week, there are a few things I want to talk to you about that I think are super important. The first thing, because I like to dive right in, the first thing I want to talk about is CBP Stampless Entry Program. The CBP Stampless Entry Program started as a pilot program, and it started last year, back in 2022, where CBP had a pilot program and they chose a few ports of entry where they, instead of putting a stamp that we're all very used to in our passports, they stopped doing that and they were simply uploading the information of your entry and your exit to their online system where we have access to it. So that program is now no longer a pilot program. That program is here to stay. So if you have traveled recently and you've noticed that you haven't gotten a stamp in your passport, that was not an error. That was not a mistake because of the Stampless Entry Program. So the Stampless Entry Program is great for CBP. It helps them move people through the ports of entry quicker. Everything goes online. In theory, we have access to all that information online. So one of the issues for us on our end with the Stampless Entry Program is that we have to be vigilant and make sure that our status is entered correctly into the online system. So I encourage everyone to go to the online system, and you can reach it by, if you just search I-94 card, and I'll make sure I drop that link in the comments below. But if you just search for I-94 card, you should come up with the CBP government website where you can put in some basic information about yourself, your passport number, your country, and it should pull up your I-94 card for you, as well as your travel history. And you want to make sure that that information is correct. And you want to be checking that every single time you enter the US and when you leave the US, because you want to make sure that you are stamped into the US properly and the correct status that you think that you have for the visa and your passport. But you also want to make sure that you are tracking your time in and out of the US. What you do not want to have happen without your knowledge is that you are accidentally, let's say, stamped in as a visitor and you're supposed to be in a work authorized visa. So maybe you were stamped in as a visitor. You had no idea. You thought you were stamped in as an H-1B or an L-1A, and you then go to work. Well, now you've worked without authorization unknowingly, but you still have worked without authorization. And so the CBP officers see thousands of people a day. They are human and we all make mistakes. So I always recommend that people are pulling their I-94 card information after every single time they enter and every single time they leave the US. They should be looking at their travel history, and it's all available to us online. And so some of the things where an incorrect status entry on your I-94 can impact you and why your I-94 is important is if we're looking at whether or not you have work authorization in the US, we look to your I-94 card. Department of Motor Vehicles looks to your I-94 card to see what status you're in the United States, and thus whether or not, according to their individual state rules, they're going to issue you a driver's license. Your accountant is going to want to know how many days you've spent inside the US, and that comes with oftentimes stamps in your passport. But since we don't have those anymore, you can use the entry and exit trip data also, which you can also get at that same website where you can pull your I-94 card. So the I-94 card is important for various reasons. It also tells you, if you are here as a temporary stay, what day you need to leave by. So it's super important that every single time you are entering and exiting the United States, you want to pull your I-94 card as well as your trip information. And your I-94 card is what governs your stay here in the United States. It's what tells us what your status is and how long you're allowed to stay. So it's a super, super important document. And now that that information is not being stamped in your passport, you want to make sure that you have it. The trip data, your entry and exits are also really super important if you're currently a green card holder and you need to track your time in and out of the United States because you then want to apply for US citizenship. Sometimes, again, CBP, they're human. It's not AI, it's not robots, they're humans. And sometimes they make mistakes when they enter that data. So you also want to be, if you're a green card holder, you also want to be tracking your entries and exits very carefully. So along with the information, at that website from CBP, you also want to be keeping, copies of your boarding passes, copies of your frequent flyer account trips that you have booked. And you want to be keeping those records. You can also keep your credit card data when you purchase tickets. Oftentimes, your entire itinerary is listed on your credit card data. So these are things that you want to make sure that you are keeping so that when you apply for citizenship, if you need to show that you are in the US for a certain number of days, you have your trip data on your own. So that's always super important. So just make sure that you are, backing up and keeping copies of this information just in case you need it. And if you go into and you check your I-94 card and you've been stamped in incorrectly, because again, it does happen, and you're not quite sure how to get that fixed, feel free to reach out to our office. We are more than happy to help you and assist you with getting that information corrected with CBP. So the next thing I want to talk about this morning is the National Interest Waiver. I get a lot of questions about the National Interest Waiver and whether or not somebody can apply for the National Interest Waiver. The National Interest Waiver is a category of green card. It is a second preference green card. Typically, the second preference requires a master's degree at a minimum, or the equivalent of a master's degree. And so I get a lot of questions about that. One of the reasons I get a ton of questions about the National Interest Waiver is because it is a green card category that does not require an employer to sponsor the employee. So the employee, the immigrant, can what we call self-sponsor. They can be sort of the captain of their own ship. People very much like a self-sponsored National Interest Waiver because it gives them more career flexibility and freedom. So I get a lot of questions about the National Interest Waiver, so I thought I would address some of them this morning. So the National Interest Waiver is a type of green card. It is a one way that an individual can apply for lawful permanent residence to the United States through employment. In order to qualify for the National Interest Waiver, whatever you are doing, your proposed career path, your proposed endeavor must have both substantial merit and national importance. So that is a pretty high hurdle to reach, but it's certainly reachable. It also, you as the individual, you have to be well positioned to advance this particular career that you have. So it's generally not for people who are at the very beginnings of their career. It is for people that have been in their careers for a while and can show that not only what they are doing is of substantial merit and national importance, but they have the ability, if the green card is issued, to keep going in that career path, to keep going in that track, that you have a plan to continue and move forward. And we also need to show that on balance, it would be beneficial to the United States to waive the other, general requirements. And some of those requirements that we're asking to be waived that you do not have to do as a national interest waiver applicant is you don't have to have an employer sponsor. You don't have to go through the labor certification application, and you reach out to the Department of Labor and get their sign off. So those are some of the things that we don't have to do with a national interest waiver. So it is a complex application because, again, you need to show that your preferred career path has both substantial merit and national importance, that you yourself as the individual are well positioned to advance in your career after the green card is issued, and that on balance it's really beneficial to the United States to issue you this green card and this benefit. So the way that my office works is when we're working with someone, the first step is a consultation. And during that consultation, we talk about the requirements, the government requirements for a national interest waiver. We talk about what an individual is doing and if it has substantial merit and national importance. We talk about the impact of what their particular career path is. We also talk about their future plans in that same line of work. We also go in depth into their educational background and their length of time within their chosen career or industry. So I like to dig deep and really figure out what you're doing, who you're helping, how you're going to continue to help, so that we can figure out if we can craft a really good argument for a national interest waiver. At the same time, during my consultations, we also look at other options that you may have for a green card. Certainly, we focus on the national interest waiver if someone says, I'm specifically looking at that category. But I like to also tell people what some of their other options may be if they have other options. The other great thing about the national interest waiver is that it is now eligible for premium processing. So that is 45 calendar days. If we opt for premium processing, it's 45 calendar days for the government to process that application and tell us something. So that significantly cuts down the wait time for people when they are looking to achieve lawful permanent resident status here in the United States. So if you have any questions, do you qualify for a national interest waiver? Is it the right option for you? Do you have other options? Is this something that you're really looking into? Feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to schedule a consultation and sit down and chat with you. And you can send us a DM. We're certainly happy. We respond to those all the time. Or you can give the office a call at 954-903-1337. And we're more than happy to talk about your potential options with a national interest waiver. So that is all I have for you all this beautiful Monday morning. If you have any questions about your immigration case, or you want to start a case, you want to apply for citizenship, you want to sponsor someone to come work for your company, feel free to reach out. Again, we are happy to help. And have a beautiful Monday morning and a great rest of your week.